Welcome back. Let the rain settle your thoughts as we explore a story about love, betrayal, and the choices that change everything. These are real stories, told slowly, so you can rest while you listen. I'm curious, where are you listening from tonight? And do stories like this help you fall asleep? Story 1. The photograph that broke my world. They say a marriage can die in 1,000 small moments, but mine was murdered in a single photograph. It was a Tuesday. I remember because the recycling truck was making its loud, groaning rounds outside, and I was standing in the kitchen, holding a picture of my husband, Ben, with a son I never knew he had. It started 3 weeks earlier in what I thought was just a low-grade funk. I am Maya. I am a graphic designer, and Ben Iswas a regional sales manager. We'd been married for 12 years, together for 15. We had the quiet suburban home, the two-car garage, the shared calendar app that kept our lives in a tidy, color-coded sync. The cracks were so subtle I mistook them for the natural wear of a long-term relationship. Ben had been working late more often, claiming a new, demanding client. His phone, which used to lie face up on the nightstand like an open book, now lived in his pocket, screen down. He'd taken up running, he said, to manage stress. I'd find him staring out the back window at the bird feeder, his coffee cooling in his hand, a distance in his eyes I couldn't bridge with a touch or a question. "Just tired, babe," he'd say, offering a smile that didn't reach his temples. The family holiday dinner was the catalyst. It was at my parents' house for Easter. My sister, Chloe, had brought her new boyfriend, and everyone was in that slightly strained, festive mood. Ben was helping my dad carve the ham, laughing a little too loudly at a joke. My phone had died and I needed to check a work email. "Ben, can I borrow your phone for a sec? Mine's dead." The shift in him was instantaneous. The laugh cut off. A flicker of something panic, pure and simple, crossed his face before he mastered it. Battery's almost dead too," he said, patting his pocket. "Let me finish this and I'll get you the charger from the car." It was too quick, too defensive. A cold trickle, like the first drop of rain before a storm, traced down my spine. In that moment, I think I knew. I just wasn't ready to admit it to myself. Have you ever had a gut feeling you chose to ignore? A whisper in your mind so quiet you could almost pretend it was just the wind. For days after that dinner, I did. I told myself I was being paranoid, insecure. We'd built a life. We had inside jokes and a mortgage and a shared love for terrible 90s action movies. But the seed was planted. I started noticing the receipts he no longer left in his coat pockets, the way he'd angle his body away from me when texting. The new, unfamiliar cologne note that sometimes clung to him, explained away as a sample from the hotel. The escalation was slow, methodical, and entirely my own doing. I became a detective in my own home, sick with shame at every step. I checked phone bills anew, recurring number calls lasting hours, late into the night. I felt nothing at first, just a numb, buzzing static. Then one evening when Ben was on one of his runs, I did the unthinkable. I logged into our shared cloud storage, a place we dump vacation photos and scan copies of our passports. I was looking for I don't know what, a confirmation or an absolution, and I found it. In a folder named Tax Docs 2022, buried under PDFs of W-2s, was a subfolder. It was labeled J. My hand hovered over the mouse. The room was utterly silent. I could hear the frantic thud of my own heart. I clicked. The first few images were innocuous, a park I didn't recognize, a blurred shot of a sunset. Then a woman. She was pretty, with kind eyes and a warm smile, standing in front of a bookstore. My breath hitched. Then the next picture. Ben with his arm around her, grinning the easy, unguarded grin I hadn't seen in months. The next. Ben, the woman, and a little boy. A boy of about 5 with Ben's exact cowlick and my husband's unmistakable lopsided smile. They were at a zoo, the boy perched on Ben's shoulders. The date stamp was 6 months old. The world didn't shatter, it dissolved. The colors of my office bled away into a grayscale hump. The physical sensation was a punch to the solar plexus, leaving me airless and hollow. I just stared, scrolling, each image a nail in the coffin of my reality. Birthday parties, Christmases, a tiny bed in a room painted blue. A life, a parallel entire life. I closed the laptop. I didn't cry. I walked to the kitchen, made a cup of tea I never drank, and waited. The false hope came in the form of a desperate internal bargain. Maybe it was an old friend's kid. Maybe he was a mentor, a big brother. Maybe there was an explanation that would stitch my universe back together. When Ben came home, smelling of night air and that faint, foreign cologne, I was sitting at the kitchen table in the dark. "Hey," he said, flipping on the light, blinking at me. "You okay? Who is Jay?" The question fell into the room like a stone. He froze, all the color drained from his face. "What, the folder in the cloud, Jay, the woman, the little boy?" My voice was terrifyingly calm. "Who is he, Ben?" He opened his mouth, closed it. The silence stretched, taut and suffocating. Then his shoulders slumped. The performance was over. "His name is Jake," he whispered, the words barely audible. He's my son." The climax wasn't a scream. It was a quiet, surgical unpacking of a 7-year betrayal. He'd met Julie at a conference the year after we got married. "It was a fling," he said, "that got complicated. She got pregnant. She decided to keep it." He'd been supporting them financially, emotionally, playing house in an apartment across town for 1 weekend a month for years. Our vacations were planned around his work trips to see them. Our savings had subtly bled into a second life. The late nights, the running, the distance seat was the exhausting logistics of a double existence. He cried. He said he never meant for it to happen, that he loved me, that he was trapped and scared. He begged. He promised to end it, to cut ties, to go to counseling. For a fleeting, pathetic moment, I looked at this broken man sobbing on our kitchen floor and felt a wave of pity. This was my husband. This was the father of the child Id miscarried 4 years ago, the loss that had hollowed us both out. He'd sought solace and created a son. But then I thought of the boy, Jake, with Ben's smile, an innocent child who knew Ben as dad. And I thought of the photograph, the 3 of them at the zoo, a perfect little unit. My pity curdled into something cold and hard. "You have a son," I said, my voice finally breaking. "You have a family. For 7 years, you've had a family. Where does that leave me, Ben? The audience to your real life." The fight left him. He just knelt there, utterly defeated. The confrontation was over. There was nothing left to say. The story doesn't end with a neat divorce decree or a fiery revenge. It ends in a therapist's office, a sterile, quiet room that smells of lavender and regret. I am there alone. I'm trying to learn how to rebuild a self that was so thoroughly intertwined with another that its extraction feels fatal. Ben is living in an apartment, a different one. He's navigating co-parenting with Julie and the wreckage he made of us. Sometimes in my darkest, quietest moments, I don't think about the betrayal with Julie. I think about the birthday parties I didn't attend, the first days of school I didn't see, the bedtime stories I didn't read to a little boy who shares my husband's face. I lost a child, and he went out and built a whole one with someone else. The marriage is gone. But some days, the grief for the phantom family, his other one, and the one we never got to have, feels like it will swallow me whole. I am learning that survival isn't about moving on. It's about building a new shore, brick by painful brick, while the tide of that old life still tries to pull you under. Thank you for listening to my story. It's one of the hardest things I've ever had to share. If you've ever faced a betrayal that redefined your world, or if you're just trying to make sense of the pieces, I see you. Please share your own thoughts or experiences in the comments below sometimes. Just knowing you're not alone is the first brick on that new shore. If this story resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe for more real, raw journeys through the complexities of the human heart. Story 2. The message that shattered our family. I think the worst part isn't the betrayal itself. It's the quiet, ordinary moment you realize your entire life has been a carefully constructed stage play, and you're the only one who never got the script. My name is Maya, and it all unraveled not with a scream, but with the soft chime of a tablet notification in my childhood bedroom. The normalcy, looking back, was a masterpiece of delicate cracks painted over. It was my father's 60th birthday weekend. My husband, Ben, and I had driven 6 hours with our 4-year-old daughter, Lily, to my parents' quiet suburban home. The air smelled of fallen leaves and my mother's pot roast. Everything was as it should be. My dad beaming as Lily presented him with a lopsided, glitter-covered card, my mom fussing over the gravy. Ben was his usual steady self, helping my dad set up the patio heater, his laugh echoing warmly in the crisp autumn evening. But there were the cracks, subtle as hairline fractures in China. Ben had been distant, not cold, just preoccupied. He'd started taking his phone to the bathroom, a habit he used to mock. When Id kissed him that morning before the drive, he'd hugged me back a beat too long, a silent, tense clutch that felt less like affection and more like a man steadying himself on a cliff edge. Id chalked it up to work stress. His architecture firm was bidding on a big project. That's what you do, isn't it? You explain away the chill with practicalities. You mute the quiet alarm bell in your gut with the volume of routine. Here's something I want to ask you because I've thought about it every day since. Have you ever had a gut feeling, a deep, primal whisper that something is wrong and you actively chose to ignore it? You tell yourself you're being paranoid, dramatic, insecure. You list all the logical reasons you're wrong. What's the moment you finally stop arguing with that whisper? For me, it was late that first night. The house was asleep, a symphony of soft snores. Lily was curled between Ben and me in my old twin bed, her little hand on my cheek. I couldn't sleep. That whisper was a shout. I slipped out of bed, careful not to wake them, and padded into the den. The blue light of my old desktop monitor flickered on. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for. A confirmation of my insanity, perhaps. I checked our joint bank account, normal. Social media, nothing. Then I remembered the family tablet, an old device we used for streaming, synced to Ben's email for app purchases. It was on the charger in the kitchen. My heart was a frantic bird against my ribs as I powered it on. I opened the email app. His primary account wasn't logged in, but there was another, an address I didn't recognize. bjameson@design.com. Jameson was his middle name. The password was saved. My finger hovered. This was the line. Crossing it meant I no longer trusted the man I'd built a life with. I took a breath that felt like shards of glass and I tapped. The inbox was sparse. A few shipping confirmations, a newsletter, and one thread. A single ongoing conversation with a woman named Alina. The subject line, Ray, updates. The preview of the latest message sent 2 days prior read, "She's doing great." Attached the latest scan. "We can't wait for you to see her in person. She has your nose." The world didn't spin, it simply ceased to exist. There was no sound, no air, just the cold, pixelated glow of those words. I opened the thread. It went back months. Talk of appointments, of cravings, of hopes. Of a due date in early spring. Of a name, Isabel. There were pictures. A sonogram image, grainy and miraculous. A photo of a woman with a gentle smile and a pronounced baby bump standing in a sun-drenched nursery. A nursery Ben had designed. He'd sent sketches. He'd discussed paint swatches. He'd written, "Make sure the glider is the one by the window." Maya loved that for Lily. He'd used my experience, our daughter's infancy, to curate a life for another woman carrying his child. I must have made a sound, a choked whimper, because a moment later my mother was in the doorway, her robe pulled tight. "Maya, honey, what's wrong?" I couldn't speak. I just turned the tablet toward her. Her face, in the shifting light of the screen, went from concern to confusion to a horrified, pallid understanding. She rushed forward and pulled me into her arms as my body began to shake. A violent, silent tremor. "Oh, my baby," she whispered over and over. "My poor baby." The false hope came in the bleak, gray hours of dawn. My father, stoic and furious, had taken Lily for an early pancake breakfast to get her out of the house. Ben found me on the back porch, wrapped in a blanket, staring at nothing. He knelt before me, his eyes red-rimmed. "Maya, please, let me explain." And for a wild, desperate moment, I thought there was an explanation. A sick joke, a case of mistaken identity, a long-lost relative. It was a mistake, he pleaded, tears streaming. One night a year ago, after a client dinner. It meant nothing. I ended it immediately. She got pregnant. She decided to keep it. I've been trying to handle it, to figure out how to tell you without destroying us. He reached for my hand. I let him take it. It felt like a dead thing. "I love you. I love Lily. This doesn't change that. We can get through this. We can go to therapy. It'll support the child, but it doesn't have to be part of our lives." The relief he offered was a sedative, a warm, heavy blanket of denial. Maybe we could box this up. Maybe we could be the strong couple that survived this. For a few fragile hours, huddled in my childhood room with him holding me, I almost believed the lie. The climax wasn't a fight, it was a question. Later that day, after my parents returned with a blissfully oblivious Lily, I needed air. I needed to think. I went for a drive, ending up at the quiet park where Ben had proposed. I sat on a bench, the ghost of my younger, hopeful self hovering nearby, and I opened the email thread again. I read it all, every word, with the cold clarity of daylight. I saw the dates. The one night was 14 months ago. The emails spoke of meetings, of coffee, of shared excitement. This wasn't a one-night stand handled at arm's length. This was a parallel life, a relationship. I saw a sentence I'd missed in my initial shock. Alina had written, "I know this is hard with your family situation, but Isabel will know her dad. She deserves that. Your family situation." I was a situation. My daughter was a complication. The full, monstrous weight of it settled on me, not with a crash, but with a slow, suffocating finality. He hadn't ended it. He was living two lives, and in one of them we were the obstacle. I drove back to the house. I walked past my mother's worried gaze, past my father reading to Lily in the living room. I went upstairs to the bedroom. Ben was packing his overnight bag, his movements efficient. He looked up, a flicker of hope in his eyes. "Maya, did you think?" I didn't scream, I didn't cry. My voice was a flat, foreign thing. "Isabel, that's the name you chose." He froze. "The emails go back over a year, Ben. You've been seeing her. You helped design the nursery. You discussed my preferences for the glider." His face crumpled. "It's not like that. I was just trying to do the right thing by the baby." "Stop," I said. The word was quiet, but it cut the air like a blade. "You have another family. You are expecting a child, actively, intentionally involved in its coming. That is your reality. Ours," I looked at my sleeping daughter's stuffed rabbit on the pillow. "Ours is the life you come home to when you're done playing house." He started to speak, but I held up a hand. "I have one question, just one, and I need the truth." I took a breath that burned. "Do you love her?" The silence that followed was the loudest sound I have ever heard. It filled the room, dense and choking. He didn't look at me. His shoulders slumped in a surrender that was more devastating than any lie. He didn't say yes. He didn't have to. His silence, his profound, gut-wrenching shame, was the confession. "Get out," I whispered, "now. And don't you dare wake our daughter." He left. I heard the soft click of the front door, the start of his car engine, the sound fading down the street. I walked to the window and watched the empty space where his car had been. The autumn sun was setting, casting long, skeletal shadows across the lawn my father had mowed for 30 years. I didn't cry then either. There was a strange, hollow calm. The stage had collapsed. The script was ashes. All that was left was me, in my childhood bedroom, with a sleeping daughter and a future that was a vast, terrifying blank page. I am no longer the woman who believed in the solidity of the life she built. I am the architect of the ruins, learning, breath by painful breath, how to build a shelter from the debris. Thank you for listening to my story. It's a pain I never thought I'd have to share, but there's a strange comfort in not carrying it alone. If you've ever faced a betrayal that redefined your world, or if you're just trying to make sense of the cracks in your own normalcy, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's be a community for each other. And if this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more real, raw journeys through the complexities of the human heart. Story 3. The day I met my husband's other family. I found out my husband had another wife when a little girl with his eyes asked me for a juice box at a public park. My name is Maya. I've spent the last 6 months replaying that moment. The way the sunlight dappled through the oak leaves. The sound of children's laughter that suddenly felt like mockery. The cold chill that ran up my spine despite the summer heat. It wasn't a text message or a stray receipt that unraveled my life. It was a child's innocent request, and the look of sheer, unadulterated panic on my husband Ben's face when he saw her. Our normal was so carefully constructed. Ben and I lived in a quiet suburban home that smelled of lemon polish and the lavender I grew in pots by the front door. He was a logistics manager, often away for regional depot reviews. I was a freelance graphic designer, working from our sun-drenched spare room. Our life was a tapestry of comfortable routines. Wednesday night pasta, Saturday morning hikes, the way he'd always kiss my forehead before leaving, even if just to get the mail. But the threads were loose. I just chose not to pull them. His phone, which was once left casually on the coffee table, now lived in his pocket, screen down. He'd started a new, intense fitness regimen, coming home with the vague, clean smell of a gym shower he'd never seen. And there was the second phone, the work phone. A black, utilitarian thing he said his company issued for a new project. When it rang, he'd disappear into the garage, saying the signal was better. I told myself I was being paranoid, that after 7 years of marriage, trust shouldn't have conditions. I poured my unease into perfecting my sourdough starter, into planting more lavender. Have you ever had a gut feeling so profound it felt like a physical presence in the room with you, but you shushed it, fed it excuses because the alternative was too world-shattering to entertain? That was my entire existence for those months leading up to the park. The escalation began with a missed anniversary, our 7th. He claimed a major system failure at a distribution center 3 states over. He sent flowers, expensive ones, to the house with a note that read, "To my only love, home soon." I remember holding that card, the words "only love" feeling performative, like a line in a play. He video called me that night from a generic-looking hotel room, the faint sound of a kid's cartoon playing in the background of a neighboring room, he said. His eyes didn't quite meet mine on the screen. A week later, desperate for a connection, I suggested a picnic at Brookside Park, a place we used to go when we were dating. He hesitated, a flicker of something fear in his eyes, before agreeing too quickly. That Sunday, we laid out our blanket. The normalcy was a performance. He was jumpy, scanning the park with a tension in his shoulders I mistook for work stress. And then she appeared, a little girl, maybe 4, with riotous curls and a smattering of freckles across her nose. She toddled up to our blanket, pointed at our cooler, and said, "Juice box, please." Her voice was sweet. Then she looked past me at Ben, and her face lit up with uncomplicated joy. "Daddy." The world did not slow down. It snapped into a horrifying, high-definition clarity. I saw the exact shade of blue in her eyes, Ben's blue. I saw the shape of his chin on her small face. I saw the color drain from Ben's complexion, leaving him a gray, waxy statue. He didn't breathe. "Molly," he whispered, a strangled sound. Then a woman's voice, cheerful and close, called out, "Molly, don't bother those people." And she walked up. She was holding a toddler boy on her hip. She had a kind, tired face. She looked at me with an apologetic smile, which then faltered as she saw Ben. Her expression cycled through confusion, recognition, and a dawning horror that mirrored my own. The toddler on her hip pointed and babbled, "Dada." The silence between the 4 of us, counting the children, was a living, choking thing. Ben finally moved, standing up so abruptly he knocked over our wine glass. "Claire," he said. "Maya, this is I can explain." There was a false hope, a brief, insane moment of reflection in the car ride home. He sobbed great heaving sobs, gripping the steering wheel. He spun a wild, chaotic story about a past relationship, a one-time mistake, a woman who had tricked him, who had shown up years later with a child he only recently found out about. He claimed he was trying to handle it, to protect me, to figure out the right way to tell me. He said the word only 100 times. "You're my only wife, my only life." I sat in the passenger seat, numb, watching the suburban streets blur past. A part of me, the part that had built a life with this man, wanted to believe the catastrophe had limits. Maybe it was a tragic, contained secret. Maybe we could go to therapy. Maybe. The alternative was total annihilation. The climax didn't happen with shouting. It happened in the cold, blue light of my laptop screen at 3 a.m. as Ben slept a guilty, exhausted sleep on the couch. The work phone was finally, carelessly, left on the kitchen counter. The password was our old anniversary, the one he missed. The digital trail was a meticulous chronicle of a double life. It wasn't a past mistake. It was a present, parallel universe. Photos of a family, Ben, Claire, Molly, and the little boy, Leah at a pumpkin patch from last October. A mortgage application for a house in a town 40 minutes away, co-signed 6 months prior. Text threads planning a birthday party for Molly, with Ben discussing cake flavors. A shared calendar with soccer practice and pediatrician appointments. An email receipt for 2 matching bracelets, one sent to our address, one to Claire's. The most recent text sent to Claire just yesterday read, "Long day with the regional team. Miss you and the monsters. Home tomorrow." He had been home with me yesterday. He had told me he missed me over dinner. The evidence was a bottomless pit. He hadn't just fathered a child. He had built another family. The other wife wasn't the other woman, I was. The confrontation was quiet. I printed it all. I laid the pages in a neat stack on the dining table, the surface wet sanded and stained together. I woke him and simply pointed. He didn't try to explain. The fight left him as he saw the proof, physical and undeniable, of his own meticulously constructed lie. He just slumped into a chair. How long? I asked, my voice strangely calm. The real timeline. He looked at the floor. Claire and I met 9 years ago. We got married 5 years ago at a courthouse. Molly is 4, Leo is 2. He had been married to her for 2 years before he married me. He had proposed to me while she was pregnant with Molly. The math was cruel and absolute. Why? The question was a whisper. He finally looked at me and his eyes were empty. I loved you both. I didn't want to choose. I thought I could make it work. It was the most honest and the most devastating thing he could have said. His confession wasn't of malice, but of a profound, selfish cowardice. He didn't want to lose either life, so he gambled with both. He lost. The story doesn't end with a neat resolution. I am in a small apartment now, surrounded by boxes. The divorce proceedings are a tangled, brutal mess of bigamy charges and frozen assets. Claire and I have spoken once in a lawyer's office. We sat on the same side of the table, 2 shipwreck survivors washed up on the same bleak shore. We are not friends. We are allies in a war of paperwork and grief. Sometimes I think of those children, of Molly's request for a juice box, and my heart breaks in a new, complicated way. Ben's betrayal was not just against me, but against the very concept of truth. He fractured 2 homes and the lives of 2 young children who call him daddy. I am learning to live in the rubble of the life I thought was real. I am learning that the person I loved was a character, a role he played between 2 sets of curtains. And I am learning slowly that my own story isn't over. It's just beginning on a foundation I had to tear down with my own hands. I don't know what forgiveness looks like, or if it's even a destination on my map. I only know that every morning I wake up in a truth that is harsh, but it is mine alone. Thank you for listening to my story. It's one of the hardest things I've ever shared. If you've ever faced a betrayal that redefined your world, or if you're just trying to make sense of the pieces, I see you. Please share your own thoughts or experiences in the comments below. Your stories remind us we're not alone in these complicated human struggles. If this resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe for more real, raw stories about relationships, survival, and the messy path to healing. Story 4. What my therapist said after the betrayal. I sat in that leather chair, the one that smelled faintly of lemons and old books, and I told a stranger the most shameful truth of my life. I had built my entire world on a lie I told myself. My name is Sarah. For 10 years, I was married to a man named David, and for 10 years, I believed we were building something beautiful, until I discovered that the foundation was made of sand, and the blueprints had been drawn by someone else entirely. This isn't just a story about infidelity. It's about the slow, excruciating process of realizing you've been an architect of your own ruin, and the single, quiet sentence from my therapist that finally made the ground stop shifting beneath my feet. My normal, the one I fought so hard to preserve, looked like this: Tuesday morning. The suburban hum of our neighborhood waking up. The hiss of the espresso machine, a sound David insisted was worth the investment. 2 mugs on the granite countertop, eyes black, mine with a splash of oat milk. I'd watch him from the kitchen island, his back to me as he scrolled through his phone, his shoulders already tense with the day ahead. There were cracks, of course, if you looked. The way he'd de-angle his phone screen away from me, a subtle tilt I told myself was just a habit. The new passcode on his laptop, changed for work security. The Saturday golf games that ran from dawn until well after dusk, leaving him smelling of grass and beer and something else, of vague, unfamiliar cologne I once asked about. Must be Scott's new aftershave, he said, his laugh a beat too quick. I'd nod, sipping my coffee, choosing the warm, known bitterness of the drink over the cold, unknown suspicion in my gut. Our home was a museum of our supposed happiness. Framed photos from hikes we never took anymore. A throw pillow embroidered with S 2013. A quiet so deep it had its own sound. Have you ever had a gut feeling you chose to ignore? One so loud it was a constant whisper in your ear, but you turned up the volume of your own life to drown it out. I'd love to know if you've been there in that space between knowing and not wanting to know. Drop a comment below. The escalation didn't come with a bang. It came with a whisper on a Thursday. David was away on a client dinner, an overnight trip. The house felt different without his low-grade anxiety and it lighter, but also emptier in a way that made the silence accusatory. I was cleaning out the hall closet, a task I'd avoided for months, when I found his old college duffel bag shoved behind winter coats. It was dusty. I pulled it out, thinking I'd wash it. The zipper stuck. When it gave way, the smell that wafted out was not of old gym clothes, but of paper and ink. It was full of files, not from his current job, but from a bank I didn't recognize. Our joint account statements were on top, but beneath them, separate statements for an account in his name only. The transactions were regular, substantial. Transfers to a J. Reed. Withdrawals for luxury rentals in a beach town 3 hours away. Payments to a florist called the Coastal Bloom. My hands went cold, the paper crisp and hostile between my fingers. I sat on the closet floor, surrounded by coats, and I traced the numbers with a trembling finger. This was the evidence, mundane and brutal. This was the spreadsheet of my betrayal. For a week I lived in a state of suspended animation. I confronted him not with fury but with a numb, detached calm that frightened even me. I laid the statements on the dining table, the one where Wed hosted Thanksgiving. He didn't deny it. He crumbled. He wept. He called it a massive mistake, a moment of weakness that spun out of control. J. Reed was Jessica, a colleague. It was over, he swore. It had been emotional, then physical, but it was done. He begged. He promised therapy. He deleted numbers, showed me his phone, became a parody of transparency. And like a fool starving for any scrap of my old reality, I clung to this. This was my false hope. We went to a couples counselor. We spoke in careful, wounded tones. We scheduled date nights. We had cautious, mournful sex. I thought maybe, just maybe, we could cauterize the wound. I told myself that marriages could survive this, that the history we had was a weight heavier than a single affair. I was trying to glue a shattered vase back together, ignoring the fact that I was cutting my hands on the pieces. The climax came not with another discovery about Jessica, but in that same therapist's office, 3 months into our strained reconciliation. We were talking about trust, about rebuilding. David was doing everything right. He was accountable, present, penitent. The therapist, Dr. Levin, a woman with kind eyes that missed nothing, turned to me. "Sarah," she said, her voice soft, "you're doing a lot of work to manage David's guilt and to monitor his behavior. But I want to know, what are you doing with your anger?" I stared at her. Anger? I wasn't angry. I was sad. I was tired. I was trying. David shifted uncomfortably beside me. "I don't have room for anger," I said, my voice thin. "Anger would burn it all down." Dr. Levin leaned forward. Or she said it would clear the dead brush so something new could grow. The betrayal is not just the affair, Sarah. The deeper betrayal is the theft of your reality. For years, you lived in a story he was co-authoring in secret. Your anger is the part of you that knows you deserve to live in a truth, even if it's a painful one. And then she said the words that broke the dam, that ended our marriage, and that ultimately began my survival. "You cannot heal in the same environment where you got sick." I looked at David. I saw the panic in his eyes. He saw the understanding in mine. The fight wasn't about Jessica anymore. It was about the house, the photos, the quiet, the lie of the life Wed built. It was about me choosing myself over the corpse of our marriage. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just said, "I am done." And in that moment, the unbearable weight I'd been carrying, the weight of his secret, of my complicity in ignoring it, of the forced reconciliation lifted. It was replaced by a devastating, crystalline grief, but it was my grief. It was real. The divorce was a quiet, bureaucratic unraveling. He moved out. I stayed in the house, now just a house, and began the long, slow work of dismantling the museum. I took down the photos. I donated the throw pillow. I sit in the quiet now, and for the first time I can hear my own thoughts. I see Dr. Levin alone now. We talk about my anger, my grief, the person I am outside of us. It's painful, but it's honest. The ground is solid, even when it's hard. I don't know what my future holds, but I know it will be a story I write for myself, word by careful, truthful word. I'm no longer living in someone else's fiction. Thank you so much for listening to my story. It means the world to share this space with you. If this resonated with you, or if you've ever faced a betrayal that forced you to rebuild your entire reality, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Your stories and support are what make this community so powerful. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more real, raw stories about love, survival, and the messy, beautiful complexity of human relationships. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe for more horror stories.